Hi, my name is Dom, this is my dad, and this is my mom. I'm here to tell my story on how I got paralyzed and what it's like to be paralyzed. February 13th, 2022, I woke up excited to ride that day. It was Super Bowl Sunday, the Chiefs versus the Bengals, and I remember going out in the living room and arguing with my dad. And he was like, it's just not a good day to go. And I remember me telling him, you're either coming with me or I'm going to go by myself. Me, my mom, and dad got in the truck and we were headed to the track. It was like 13 degrees out this day. And I had been working a lot before, so I knew I had to go riding. I didn't care how cold it was or what the temperature was. But when we got there, I remember getting out, getting ready, and my dad told me, it's super cold. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I said my prayer, and I went out on the track, 30 seconds into the track, just rolling everything, side lap. Went in the rollers, and my hand came off. I flew off the bike. I landed, and I remember trying to sit up. As soon as I hit, I knew I broke my back and hurt my spinal cord. And I was trying to get up, and I knew I couldn't. I went to go put my visor up. It was broke. I couldn't push it up, and I just seen my dad running over. And I just laid back down. I remember coming in and out of consciousness, and then don't remember what happened, and my dad can tell you the rest.
So once I got to Dom, he had some blood coming out of his mouth. Pretty much ripped his goggles off, tried to check on him, tried to just see if he was okay, assess what was going on. Once he went over the bars, he tumbled probably 3 or 4 times. The bike was laying on its side, still running. So I hurry up, just shut the bike off, trying to assess him. And that's when he told me he couldn't feel his legs, couldn't move. And he told me he broke his back and broke his spinal cord. And I told him, no, you didn't. You just took a good dinger. So come on, let's just try to get up. Try to get up. And as soon as he tried to get up, his legs started shaking. Couldn't stand on his own. So we sat him back down. I stopped, immediately got my cell phone, called his mom, Lori. Told him, something's not right. We need to get him to the hospital, which she got in the truck and cut basically through the track and got to us. And from there, she started assessing him with me. And we had a gentleman pull over on the side of the road, which we're thankful for him. He was able to help us get Dom in the truck because, if you've ever had anyone that's had some kind of injury of that sort, their body pretty much goes like dead weight. So it was pretty difficult to get him up in the truck. So we got him up in the truck and tried to just keep him, conscious, keep talking to him, tell him everything's all right. And then we just drove as fast as we could to the nearest hospital at Jenny Stewart in Hopkinsville.
And I remember sitting in the back of the truck talking to my mom and saying, Mom, am I really paralyzed? There's no way I'm paralyzed. She said, you're not paralyzed. And I said, yes, I am. I can't feel my legs.
When we pulled up to Jenny Stewart, I jumped out of the truck, ran inside screaming, told them that my son had been in a dirt bike accident, that he was bleeding from his mouth. He couldn't feel his legs, and everybody swarmed the truck. They brought out a backboard and a gurney. They were pulling Dominic out of the truck.
And I remember when they brought the backboard, they said, hey, son, we're going to put this on your back, and blacked out from there. I don't remember anything.
Once we got him in there, they immediately took him back and did a CT scan in the room. And then I remember that the nurse came out and told Jake and I that Dominic would be paralyzed. Jake took it very hard, as well as I did. Dominic was laying there, and me and Jake went and we laid over Dominic as we put our hands together and told Dominic that he was paralyzed. Dominic's words were, Mom and Dad, please don't cry. God wanted things to be like this. He gave this to me because he knew that I could handle it. And then I called Jacob, his brother, and his sister, Brooklyn. And they were there within 10 minutes, it seemed like. they were sitting there and they decided that they were going to life flight Dominic to Vanderbilt.
Not because I was critical, because of the injury, and they didn't want it to mess up anymore with any road bumps.
So me and Jake got in the truck and started traveling towards Vanderbilt while Jacob and Brooklyn were there, and Jacob stayed there to watch his brother off in the helicopter to make sure he was okay.
And I remember when I was in the helicopter, when I got to Vanderbilt, I remember landing, and I remember a bunch of doctors swarming me. And I remember telling them, please don't do surgery yet. Where's my mom and dad? And then I blacked out, and I don't remember anything.
I think they just had you on so much medicine at that point, is when they came and assessed what was going on with you, and then took your mom and I out into the hallway there and pretty much told him that he's paralyzed from the chest down. He broke his T4, T5, and that's pushing into his spinal cord, and he's never going to walk again. And that's when we pretty much just lost it. All the emotion came over us, and we immediately went back in the room, told Dominic exactly what the doctors had told us, and without any hesitation, he said, don't cry. It's okay. And we were just so overwhelmed because he was so calm. And we were so just out of control with emotion. And he was so calm and just saying.
Leaning on God. He was very
Exactly.
calm, leaning on God. He knew that God had this journey for him, and this journey was going to be his story, and hopefully that his story will reach so many other people who have been put at a disadvantage like Dominic, and will do what Dominic has done this entire year, which we'll explain to you. I remember getting to the hospital and calling all our family. Jake's mom showed up the first flight in the morning. His brother showed up in the morning. And they came from out of town. They were watching the house. Brooklyn and Jacob would come up to the hospital every single day.
So once we told Dominic what was going on, and he told us with all the faith in the world, it's okay. We had been put into a separate room, waiting on the doctor to figure out exactly what they were going to do. Once we had heard, the doctor said, well, unfortunately, being Sunday, they're not going to do surgery till the morning, which we were like, well, we don't really have a choice. We just need to do whatever's best for him. Waiting, I don't know, it seemed like forever. Probably was 2-3 hours. The doctor called us and said, hey, this is pretty bad. We're going to go ahead and do surgery tonight. So upon that is when we were overjoyed, like, we need everything we can get. We need a miracle at this point. So we got back to Dominic, told him what was going on, explained what, the doctor said, and still, he was just calm as can be, not a tear, nothing. And we were basically taking everything that Dominic had from his faith and his understanding of what was going on with him, and we're leaning on him. Instead of us being the support system, Dominic was supporting us through this, even though he was the one on the table in the trauma unit at Vanderbilt, where there was people around him that were in way worse condition. And it was just, almost a miracle that the doctor decided to go ahead and do it that night. Didn't matter that it was Super Bowl Sunday. Didn't matter that, everything was going on in the hospital with other people. He just went in and took Dominic and went from there.
4 hours. The surgery was about 4 hours long. And his godmother, Amber, came and sat there and with us, and she stayed with us the entire time. she supported him and still supports him to this day.
And the surgery went till 3 in the morning.
3 in the morning.
It was about 3 a.m. before we got the phone call, said surgery was good. They were able to get the bones off the spinal cord, get the compression part that was pushing up against it off of there. They got him stabilized, and then we were able to see him at 3:30, 4 o'clock, I think. And then from there on, we stayed at Vanderbilt in the ICU. So the following morning after surgery, we were able to go there 8 a.m. and we had to wait for the doctors to do their rounds, and we could only see him from noon to 6 p.m. And it was the most excruciating thing to see your child laying there on so many different machines with these things on his legs, keeping his circulation. They had his heart rate elevated, trying to get blood flow to his spinal cord. And every morning it seemed like we couldn't get a report from the doctor that was anything positive. So those first couple days there were just so gut-wrenching, just pulling on you, just everything you had. All your emotions were just all over the place. Trying to go from staying with Dom to staying in a hotel to going back every day and getting the same report of, well, he's still sort of in the same position. We still didn't have any kind of resolve, and
he was having trouble breathing.
Yeah, he was having trouble breathing, and it was just, it was crazy. It was absolute just craziness to have all these things going on, and it happened so fast. And
he had blood coming out of his mouth. We weren't sure why. His lips were stained in blood. We didn't know what we were gonna do next. We didn't know where or what our next move was, but we went in for a round, and a doctor said to us, if that was my son, he would be going to the Shepherd Center. At the time, we didn't know what the Shepherd Center was. So we were like, okay, but apparently it's really, really hard to get into the Shepherd Center. So the next morning at rounds, the doctor told us, you're going to the Shepherd Center. So we did our research, and somehow the doctor knew a doctor, but we got into the Shepherd Center.
So once he got released from Vanderbilt, we were on the way to the Shepherd Center. In Atlanta, Georgia, it took us about 5 hours to get there. We followed the ambulance the entire time, which halfway through we had to stop. They had to flip him. They had to get him into a different ambulance and then continue on. Just because once you're injured with his injury, you have to make sure that you flip him every so often, or else he'll get a pressure sore. So we had to stop, make sure that he got flipped. We arrived at Shepherd Center. They immediately brought him upstairs
to ICU.
And we were basically, in a different state, away from our house, away from our kids, away from everything that we knew, and just going on faith, and just everything that was thrown at us felt like it was right there in that moment. But we knew that no matter what, we had to stay strong for Dom. We had to stay strong for Jacob in Brooklyn. And everything that was going on in that moment was just absolute chaos, but we made it happen. So once we were at the Shepherd Center, got him up to ICU, the doctors came in, did a full assessment on them. Basically, they performed tests, what they call an ASIA score of any kind of sharp, dull, what he could feel, what he couldn't feel. And D is the assessment he got. So it goes A, B, C, or D. A being the best, like a normal person, not a thing wrong with you, you can feel everything. And then B, C, and D, it starts getting worse, less movement, motor skills. He was at the worst you could possibly be at D. So from there, we were pretty much just going, all right, what do we do now? We're here. Let's just start and figure out where we can make the best of this situation for Dominic. So after the doctors did all their assessment, they unfortunately had to break the news to us that due to COVID, only one person could stay with Dominic, which we were like, what do we do? So unfortunately, Lori was a brave person to say, hey, I'll just stay in the apartment, which they were gracious to provide us with a little apartment on site. And I had to stay with Dominic overnight in the ICU. So the next morning when he woke up, Lori came up. We were able to see him, spend some time with him. Doctors are still doing more testing, trying to just figure out and assess where he's at. And basically was that way for quite some time. But on that second day, Dominic was so determined. He said, I'm not going to let this beat me. And he had a Gatorade bottle on his tray. And it took everything out of him to get that Gatorade bottle. And it took everything out of me not to just hand it to him. And he said, I'm going to get it. And it took him probably a minute or so to get himself up to a position to where he could reach to grab the bottle and then sit back down. And that was the first point of Dominic's journey on this recovery, of him never giving up. And the point to tell his story of this is how an injury has affected his life and how he's getting through it, and how this past year
God has been in his life, and he's leaned on God the whole time.
Exactly, yeah.
God has been his focal point, and he would remind me on the days that I didn't want to believe in God anymore. I begged God, I pleaded God, I quit believing in God, but Dominic kept his faith and kept telling me he was going to be okay, he was going to beat this.
Exactly, he did too. And we were in the ICU there for approximately a week, just because they didn't have any regular rooms. Finally, we got the word, hey, there's a room that's opened up. Another child was getting better and going home. So we were more than overjoyed, because we were, again, at the point to where, what do we do now? So we got moved into the room, got in there, and here we come again with the COVID rules. Unfortunately, only one parent can stay. So we were again at a crossroads of what do we do? So we had to go and get a air mattress, and I had to stay with Dominic every night and get up with him pretty much every 2 to 4 hours to help flip, to help learn. All the techs and nurses and staff that would come in, of trying to teach Lori and I of how to deal with his injury, how to take care of him. And that was a starting point of this whole journey of what do we do for Dominic for the rest of his life. That's what we were faced with. And at that point, we were not sure what we were up against, but with the staff at Shepherd Center, they were just over and beyond on everything for knowledge of getting Dominic in his wheelchair for the first time, of getting him acclimated with how to move. At first, he was, not sure how to get out of bed, so we had to have a Hoyer lift that would physically get a strap under him, pick him up, move him over his chair, and put him down. And I remember, what was it, the third day you were in the room?
Yeah.
We were sitting there, and we finally got to meet his OT and PT, which was Lindsay and Chris, which were absolutely amazing to Dominic. And they came in and said, all right, Dom, here's a wooden board. We're going to teach you how to do a transfer. And we were like blown away, because we didn't know about any of this. And without any hesitation, Dominic was like, all right, let's do it. And we started working on that, and we basically went through procedure after procedure of how to do this, how to do that, get in and out of the chair, from just getting into the bed, learning how to put socks on his feet. The
Yeah.
littlest things that you would normally think would be so easy for someone were the biggest challenges for Dominic. The biggest challenge was taking a shower because, as you know, Dominic loves his hair. He loves being clean. He cannot have a night where he does not take a shower, so he was throwing an absolute fit about not having a shower. So they went and found him a chair, and he had to sit up in a chair. We had to strap him in, wheel him in there, because at first he couldn't even hold his own self up. We had to strap him in just to give him a shower, and that was the most gratifying moment for him to get that opening of, okay, I can do something now. I can take a shower and brush my teeth. It's step by step, day by day, to where day in and day out, this is the progress that we were doing. And it was, every day, something different, something new. And every morning, Lori would come up there 7:30 a.m. as soon as they would allow her to. And we'd have to switch out because only one parent was allowed due to COVID. So she would stay up there during the days with him, work on stuff with him. Unfortunately, being Lori, she'd always try to sneak. And, sometimes we'd get caught, sometimes we wouldn't. But she'd always want to be there for Dom. And we would try to do the best we could to get him to therapy, get him in the gym, getting him just going. Basically, it was, what can we do for Dominic? So after a couple days of us getting up, getting in the wheelchair, moving around, they took us on a tour through the facility, letting Dominic learn how to push, and they showed us what they call the garden. It's an outside fenced-in area where you can go and basically get some fresh air from being away from everything and being locked up in a hospital room. And so the hard part about the garden is, again, only one person can go out there. So either Lori or I would switch out, and she would walk down the sidewalk and meet us outside the fence. And we would just sit out there for hours talking and just trying to get fresh air. And, Dominic loves cars. So the cool thing about being on Peachtree Street in Atlanta was they have some of the coolest cars down there. McLarens, Lambos, you name it, they're down there. And Dominic, that was his highlight of his day. Every time he would, let's go to the garden, we can get some fresh air and go check out some cars. So we would do that and basically do therapy. And, one night we were sitting there, and I can't remember what day it was, to be honest with you, but we were just sitting there, and all of a sudden we got a phone call. And Lori's brother, sister, my niece, family, they all showed up. And that was the greatest.
We had no clue that they were coming.
Right. No clue at all. And
I sat in the apartments at night away from them, and it was really hard. And so they called me and said they were outside, and it lifted our spirits so much. We went to the elevators, and Dominic opened his window, and we could see Dominic in his bed through the elevator windows. So that brought Dominic's spirit up, and they just wanted to see him and take a picture with him. They stayed there, and the next day we met him in the hallway illegally because he's not allowed to be around anyone because of COVID. And we all took a picture together, and that was the first interaction Dominic had with anybody else other than me and Jake. And that at that point it was about a month and a half in.
So after the family came, left, sort of back to the same old grind, therapy every day, we were informed that they were allowing push passes, and they basically said, hey, you can learn how to do these, basically act as a nurse for him if you were to take him out in public, make sure he's okay. And we were so excited. I know Dominic was ecstatic that we were able to get a push pass. So we went did everything we had to do, get checked off, got the push pass, and little did we know that the push pass was great because we could take him out, but you could only go as far as you could push. And I don't know if you've ever pushed a person in a wheelchair up a hill, but it is pretty difficult. So we were going up and down all these hills, doing whatever we could just to take Dom and get him out and push him around town and get to just see different things and, you know, get Lori and I, you know, acclimated with trying to have a child in a wheelchair and get around. And you really don't realize everything that's happening with bumps, curbs, sidewalks. The crazy guy, when we go to the crosswalks, and he would say, wait. Just little things like that. But it was the greatest thing to get him a push pass. And we were so excited because I believe the week later was my grandson's first birthday. And my son and his wife and all them drove down, and we were like, all right, we're going to be able to see him, you know, everything's going to be, you know, great. We're going to get a push pass. And then they told us, unfortunately, we can't give you the push pass that weekend. So we were pretty devastated. And again, we just had to go to the garden to be able to see Jacob and Jillian and the baby, let Brooklyn at least see Dom, let them see Dom, and try to get some kind of, you know, some kind of other support than just Lori and I. That way he can see his family also. So that's basically our daily routine down there at the Shepherd Center of going in and out therapy every day. They finally got him into some different therapies where they got him into the bike.
And after a while, I had got tired of the push pass. I was like, I got to go somewhere else. And so eventually I asked, hey, how do I get to be able to get into a car to go somewhere? That took like a month to be able to do that. And
that's when you learn how to use a slide board.
Yeah, and that's when I first started getting the car. Then we had a lot of fun.
So the next step in his journey was teaching him how to get in and out of a vehicle. So his physical therapy guy, Chris, would be like, hey, Dom, you want to learn something new? And of course, Dominic was always up for a challenge. So he brought out a slide board. Basically took us into the parking garage. We pulled our vehicle up and taught Dominic how to get in and out of a vehicle using a board where he would slide across and get in and out of, which was everything for him because he wanted to get out, wanted fresh air. And then we were able to get what they call a day pass. So the day pass allows us to check Dominic out, get him out of the hospital, take him off campus, and just get out. And that day for Dominic was probably the first time that you've seen a genuine smile come out of his face since the day of his injury, to where he was like, okay, I'm sort of getting back to something. He was able to get in the car. We were able to get away from the campus, roll the window down, get some fresh air, and it was just everything to him. So we would do that, you know, periodically, probably every other day. And then towards the end, it was almost every day because Dominic did not like to be there. And of course, just like anything, you know, life happens. So our vehicle had an issue. We had to stop at an auto parts store, had to get some parts for the car, and we had to repair it in the parking lot, unfortunately, but we made it happen. But Dominic wanted me to mention this, even though I didn't want to say this because it killed me to have to be the one to call Lori and call the nurses and call everyone and tell them what happened. So we're in the auto parts store. When you get the chair in and out of the vehicle, he had something called tip bars. Well, the tip bars, when you put it in the vehicle, you'd have to put them up or it wouldn't fit in the vehicle properly. Well, I got the chair out. I forgot to put the tip bars down. We're in the auto parts store, getting the part. He's looking around, and I turned my back trying to get the part I needed. 2 seconds, you know, not thinking anything about it. I didn't put his tip bars down. Next thing I know, I hear a lady go, oh my God, and I flip over and I go like this, and Dominic's already on the ground. He had tipped in his chair backwards, but somehow, some way, he had managed to grab his wheels and hold himself to where his bag on the back came up and he barely touched the ground. Thank God, because my heart and my stomach dropped. And I thought, this is it. I just messed him up all over again. And after about 5-10 minutes of me just freaking out, I'm sweating, I'm panting, and he's just cracking up going, I'm fine, everything's okay. And I'm still losing it. Get back, and his night nurse comes in, and she's like, Dominic, why are you smiling? And he's like, no reason, just this little smirk on his face. And I'm just looking at him like, don't say anything, just don't say anything. She's like, what's going on? Because something's not adding up here. So finally we had to come clean and say, he fell. And she went, oh, okay. Well, to my surprise, I guess this is normal. This is a normal thing that happens. You're going to fall in and out of the wheelchair. But I thought, I was like, this is it. They're going to be so mad at me. I did something wrong. I called Lori, and she's trying to explain to me, everything's okay. He's okay. Don't beat yourself up. And I'm freaking out. And, I couldn't handle it, thinking, what did I do to my own child? I wasn't a father that was supposed to be there to help him. But he was cracking up, telling the nurse exactly what happened, and everything just worked itself out. So
after all that happened, after about a month later of grinding every day, just trying to get better, April 20th, I was able to go to the day program, and on the weekends I'd be able to come home. And one weekend I had everybody here, and they surprised me with a big party. And then about a month later after that, I finally was able to come home, and I was home for good. And after 3 months of being in the hospital, when I came home, I just got acclimated to being in a wheelchair. And about a week later, I was graduating high school, rolling across the stage. Thought I would walk across, but I rolled across, and it doesn't really matter.
you still did it, though.
And
He did it. He did it. He was out of school for 3 months, and he graduated.
And then a week later, my uncle died. And my mom went to Ohio that day, the day he died. And we had stayed here because we had CMA tickets. The night of CMA, after we got home, that's when I started moving my legs. Maybe 6, 7 months after my injury was when I started moving my legs. I could barely move my toe. I was sitting in the bathroom. I said, Dad, I just moved my foot. And he was like, no, wait, do it again. And I could keep doing it and keep doing it. And then we went to his funeral and all that. And then I just started healing after that. And over a few months, I was able to move my legs and saw grace of God. And after a while, I was able to get up with a walker and walk with a walker. That's where I'm at today. But every time we'd go somewhere, my brother would always make sure I was included. He would never leave me out. We went to the pumpkin patch. He would pick me up, put me on the swings, put me on the slide. And one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to ride my dirt bike again. The dirt bike I crashed on. Got on it, popped a wheelie, scared everybody. I scared everybody. Popped a wheelie, and I was like, dude, why did I quit?
He used his entire upper body, which was supposed to be paralyzed from here down. He used his entire upper body because he's been praying to the Lord, and he hasn't given up on his faith in God, and him have this relationship, and Dominic just keeps improving. And
I've never let my faith drop once. And about a month ago, me and my dad went and seen my surgeon, the one who did my surgery. And when I told him I could move my legs, it was like he was blown away. Like, he never thought I would move my legs again.
And I thought his cord was severed.
And he said, your cord was really bad. You almost severed it. You were on the edge of severing your cord. And he said, you're going to get up and walk again one day. And about a year later, I can get up, walk with a walker. I can ride a stationary bike, ride my dirt bike. Back to living normal. And
hockey.
Play hockey now for the Sled Preds. And this has been my journey. Thank you for listening. And all thanks to God for what he's got me through and how awesome he is. Thank you to everyone who's bought this shirt, and the financial, the emotional, and thank you to my family. Just thank you to everyone who has supported me through this journey, and I am going to continue to fight, and I will never give up.